may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, guys, here I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be talking about what I think is the most important thing in fantasy football, and that's not identifying the players in the first round who are going to be able to get the most touches and the best offense so the efficiency will come, and choosing between guys like Jonathan Taylor or Derrick Henry. I think that most people looking at fantasy football that way are kind of doing themselves a disservice. What I would rather do is look beyond, go more so to rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and look at running backs that I think actually have the potential to be that next guy that jumps up into being a top 3 overall running back, a guy that has all the traits of a workhorse running back. All he needs is the opportunity and the right kind of efficiency to come with that, and he can be a top 3 running back in fantasy, and maybe you can get him at a discount. But before we get into the video, I want to address one thing, and that is a lot of people asking us why we do not do timestamps anymore. And to put it simply, it's because the YouTube algorithm does not like it when we do timestamps, because when we do use timestamps, what happens is our average watch time goes down significantly, and YouTube really does not recommend our videos to any new watchers. So we can't do something to kind of offset this, and that is just by destroying that like button. So I think the policy we'll probably do from now on, to be completely honest, because I want to give you all timestamps, but I also want to be able to find new listeners for the channel, is if these videos get over, we'll put the mark at just say 200 likes the first day that they're uploaded, the next day's video will have timestamps on it. And I think that's kind of an easy way for me to hold timestamps hostage, and that's just to guarantee that this channel, the overall community, continues to build. I really hope y'all understand, and I really hope that that is something that actually ends up working out. But anyway, let's dive into it. And our first guy we are going to be talking about is going to be Antonio Gibson, one of our biggest hits from the 2020 season. Y'all know how high we were on Antonio Gibson compared to consensus. And to be completely honest, it didn't work out how I thought it would. In that, we were drafting Antonio Gibson because he had every single trait to be a workhorse running back. If you go through, we understand that the running back position is very different than the wide receiver position coming out of college. When you evaluate the running back position, you're more so looking at traits. You're more so looking at, okay, does this running back have the speed where he does have that big play potential? Does this running back have the size where he could handle over 25 touches a game? Does this running back also possess the receiving game capability where he doesn't have to come out of the game on obvious passing down situations? And does this running back have the opportunity projected by the team investment that we had? And we were looking at Antonio Gibson and we go, okay, he checks every single box. I mean, he compares athletically to a running back like Saquon Barkley. I mean, he was a better athlete coming out of last year's class than anybody you would have seen in the 2021 class. Throw in the fact that we knew that he had the size. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know the BMI was in a range where he could easily be a workhorse running back. He was drafted in the 3rd round by the Washington football team going, hey, you know what? Antonio Gibson is someone that we could look to give a feature down role to in the future, because we know that usually round 3 is going to be the cutoff for those running backs that are trying to project for touches. And we also know with Antonio Gibson that he was a former college wide receiver. So in theory, he should possess that elite rushing upside as well as that elite receiving upside. Yet his rookie season, honestly, it did not all come together. While yes, he came out, and the number one question we had is, can he learn to run between the tackles? And he was fantastic at that. I mean, he came in and immediately he was a great running back on 1st and 2nd downs. But the problem was on 3rd downs. The problem was actually staying on the field, being able to run passing routes, as well as stay in and protect the quarterback with blocking. And this is the number one thing that we actually got wrong with Antonio Gibson. I mean, it didn't hurt us. If anything, it helped us that we were so high on him. But I was wrong in automatically assuming that a wide receiver transfer would be able to adjust to running routes outside instead of outside on the edge. More so coming out of the backfield, as well as being able to protect the quarterback. And I think that's probably the number one thing that Antonio Gibson needed to work on in his rookie season. So we know he can catch the ball. I think the main thing was actually pass protection on 3rd downs, which led to J.D. McKissic getting a ton of targets coming out of the backfield. But now with Antonio Gibson, who's had a full year to adjust to the running back position, I am expecting what we saw from David Johnson his sophomore season. I'm expecting that, I know this sounds crazy, but I'm expecting that Antonio Gibson jumps up to be one of the workhorse running backs in the NFL. Now, the question is, what does the efficiency look like? Because I think it would be safe to project Antonio Gibson as being a top 5 running back if he was playing on an elite NFL offense. I mean, if he was playing on an offense like the LA Rams, or if he was on the Kansas City Chiefs, I think you would lock Antonio Gibson into an insane amount of efficiency and go, this running back can be the next Dalvin Cook. This running back can be the next Saquon Barkley. And I know that's crazy to say, but Antonio Gibson, he had a low floor coming into the NFL, but he had a ceiling that could not be matched by really anybody else in the draft class outside of Jonathan Taylor. He clearly showed that the red flags around him we do not need to be concerned with. All we have to be concerned with is the overall offense in Washington. And I think that if we see Ryan Fitzpatrick come in, if we have Washington as an above average offense in terms of their overall production in trips to the red zone, Antonio Gibson could easily be a top 3 running back in fantasy. Now let's get to our next guy, and let's talk about Chase Edmonds. And here with Chase Edmonds, he dodges Travis Etienne, he dodges Najee Harris in the NFL draft, as well as Javonte Williams. And it looks like he is easily going to be in line for a massive workload in 2021. Now, yes, if you are a member on Patreon, you heard the podcast that we put out once James Conner signed. And you know, I was saying, hey, with Conner, what we're worried about is we are worried that he is going to take away goal line usage from Chase Edmonds. He's a bigger bodied running back. It would make a little bit more sense if they were on, just say, 1st and goal from the 1, that they had James Conner in there instead of having Chase Edmonds. But nonetheless, you do have Chase Edmonds on a team that lost Kenyon Drake. They brought in James Conner, but I want to point out something that's very important. They brought in James Conner for the league minimum salary or close to it. I mean, they brought him in at such a cheap cost that it's almost the exact same thing as just say the Houston Texans bringing in Mark Ingram. Actually, probably a smaller investment than the Houston Texans bringing in Mark Ingram. So even with James Conner having that name appeal, I mean, he's nothing more than what you would say Jamal Williams is for DeAndre Swift in Detroit. He's a running back that's probably going to be getting a few touches a game. We have to be worried that those touches come at the goal line, but also James Conner is a running back that has really never been able to stay healthy through his NFL career. So it's easy to see how Chase Edmonds playing in an offense with Cliff Kingsbury, playing in an offense with Kyler Murray, could eventually jump up to be a top 5 running back in fantasy. I mean, the few games that he has had to be the starting running back there before, I mean, he has been someone seeing over 20 touches a game, which is obviously absolutely massive for his projection. Now, last year, the efficiency did not come with that, but we know if efficiency fluctuates week to week, what you need to bet on is you need to bet on volume. And if you're betting on volume in a great offense, that's going to be a winning bet more times than not. Okay, so now let's get over to some of these rookies. Let's bring up my number 1 rookie going into the NFL draft. Yes, we have to drop him down to number 2 with the landing spot, but Travis Etienne. And here with Travis Etienne, yes, the range of outcomes is going to be very large. You can sit here and you can honestly say that it would probably be smart for them to implement James Robinson and Travis Etienne in kind of a 60-40 split. I think that Etienne should be the guy getting 40% of those touches, while just say James Robinson gets about 30%, and then you can have the other running backs that are just coming in to kind of rotate through like a Carlos Hyde, soaking up just pretty much nothing at that point. But nonetheless, I think what we're probably going to see actually is I think we see Travis Etienne in a 3-down role. I think you have Travis Etienne coming in, and right away he should split the backfield with James Robinson just because that's how the NFL works. What you usually see is you see even when the player that has that draft capital coming in, if there's a veteran in his spot that is definitely above average in the case of James Robinson, I mean, you have to give that running back their respect. You have to give the veteran their respect just to kind of keep everybody in the locker room completely fine. I mean, it's demoralizing a guy like James Robinson who was so good in 2020. Just a new coach comes in, and if they just completely bench him out of the gate, I think that's something that, I mean, other players on the team would be looking around going, hey, I don't like how this is getting run. James Robinson was our guy. But nonetheless, I think eventually, based on the team investment that they have into Travis Etienne, based on the fact that Urban Meyer clearly has shown, regardless of whatever he says, I mean, regardless of him coming out going, hey, Travis Etienne's the third down running back and the other guys in James Robinson and Carlos Hyde are going to be getting the touches. No, that's coach speak. You don't bet on coach speak. Coach speak is something that literally means nothing. What matters is what the team shows you. And what the team showed us is that they think Travis Etienne is worth a first-round pick. And keep in mind, Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, all of these elite running back prospects went in the second round last year. Nonetheless, they spent a first on Travis Etienne to bring him in, and I think that they are going to eventually plan on using him as that three-down running back with Trevor Lawrence. So at the beginning of the season, yes, maybe he's a low-end running back too based on his passing game usage, but I think by the time we get to the end of the year, you should not be surprised if Travis Etienne is squarely in the top 5 running backs. I mean, I think that we could have an elite breakout if Trevor Lawrence lives up to expectations. And I know it's crazy to say, but you're going to be getting him at a discount because James Robinson, who is a very, very, very good running back, is still in town. But I don't think that this coaching staff is going to use James Robinson how most people in the fantasy football community would expect. Okay, so now let's get to another rookie running back. Let's go over to Trey Sermon. And here with Sermon, I will be the first one to say that the floor is so low that you don't get to start him a single week in 2021. I mean, that is the floor where Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, Trey Sermon, they're in a nasty committee. You never really know who is going to be the guy. But nonetheless, we can sit here and we can look at it and go, I mean, if things break right, what rookie running back outside of just say Travis Etienne, Najee Harris, and Devontae Williams have nearly as much upside as Trey Sermon? I mean, he is going in what should be one of the best offenses in the entire NFL. He is going to a scheme that we have seen time and time again provide a ton of production at the running back position. Now, yes, the problem is usually you don't have that going through one guy. Usually, the majority of the cases, you're going to have that fluctuating week to week on who you're never going to know is going to be the starting running back in San Francisco. But nonetheless, if we are talking about pure upside here, if we were going everything breaks right for this player, I think there are very few rookies that have as much upside as Trey Sermon, just because he does profile to be a 3-down running back. Now, he is not in the same tier of just, say, a prospect as a Travis Etienne or Najee Harris. You can't sit here and have him in that tier just as a player coming into the NFL, but he does check those minimum thresholds to be someone that you could expect to get usage on all 3 downs. And if he can win that job in San Francisco, that would be absolutely massive. Okay, so now our next guy, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about CEH after having a miserable rookie season where I just continue to say, you know what? He's a buy low. He's a buy low. He's a buy low. He's a buy low. Week after week after week of disappointing performances by Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And not only was he disappointing on a per-touch basis, but also he just simply wasn't getting the same treatment that you would expect from most first-round running backs if you look historically at what happens in that range. I mean, they bring in Le'Veon Bell, and no, Le'Veon Bell never becomes fantasy viable, but it's because they're in this gross running back by committee situation. But now going into 2021, it looks like it's cleared out. It looks like Clyde Edwards-Helaire is the guy. And the one problem that this offense had last season was the offensive line. And obviously that is going to impact so much about their running efficiency. They addressed the offensive line time and time and time again. I mean, clearly that's the only thing that Andy Reid was doing this entire offseason is getting the general manager on the phone and going, hey, just to remind you, we need to protect our guy. We need to protect Patrick Mahomes. I mean, this offensive line should be significantly better than last year. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was 21 years old last year, and throw in the fact that they are invested into him. It looks like he projects to be a 3-down running back in the most productive offense in the NFL. And even if this offense isn't rushing the ball nearly as much as you would expect Cleveland to, or Minnesota, or any of those teams that project to have running backs getting more touches than Clyde Edwards-Helaire, it may not matter just with how overall efficient this Kansas City Chiefs offense is going to be. So CEH, someone that you have to look at and you have to go, I mean, if you can get him in the 3rd round of fantasy football drafts this year, which he's not going to fall there every time, he's probably very rarely going to fall there, but just say you start your draft at the 101, you pull Christian McCaffrey at the 212, if you get Clyde Edwards-Helaire with this type of upside, I mean, you could have a higher ceiling than pretty much anybody else in your league. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. Of course, if you did, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton, and I will see y'all with the video tomorrow. I want to give a big thank you for everyone supporting the show in Benjamin, Bill, Jason, Matthew, Hutton, Sean, Freddie's Berto, Andy, Frederick, and Chris.